Alrighty, we're going to go through how to set up a brand for attribution on Podscribe. In particular, there are going to be two steps. First is what to send to advertisers, and second is how to check that they are set up correctly. Here are a few reasons to use Podscribe for attribution tracking. And here are some common objections and suggested responses. To begin, I thought it would be super helpful to have a mental model of how Podscribe works, because if you understand this, you will be able to fix 95% of the problems that come up as you go through. So the way that Podscribe works is we get all of the people who listen to a podcast ad, we get all of the people who visit or purchase from a brand, and then we try and figure out which people are on both of those lists. We do this by comparing the IPs of the people who purchase with the IPs of the people who download the ad. The source of ad listener IPs for the podcast listeners would be either the DAI pixel or the RSS prefix. And we get brand IPs from JavaScript tags, Shopify apps, the MMPs that are out there, or server-to-server integrations. Today, we're going to be focusing on how to set up this data source, the data source of brand, visitor, and purchaser IPs. And the question then becomes, what should we be sending to advertisers? Well, if it's a regular website, then what you would generate are JavaScript tags. You would create this page, and then you would send the page to the advertiser along with a link to the setup guide for them. To do that, you go onto your dashboard, you go to the left-hand side, you hover over tag setup, and then you click on generate new tag. From there, you type in the name of your advertiser, and you select the advertiser that seems the most correct. So in this case, we've typed in Nike. Nike, the first one there would be the one to select because it has its logo and it has the simplest name. All of those other names are either from clients of Podscribe who are typing in Re-Air approved ad spot Nike as the name of the advertiser, or it is from someone, our system labeling an ad where the brand name was new approved script Nike or LN Nike. And that's where these extra orphan names come from. If you do not find the brand that you're looking for, or if you think that there are too many and this could cause a issue for any of your colleagues, please reach out to support@podscribe.com and we will merge and clean up this list of brands. Once you've clicked on Nike, the correct advertiser, this screen will pop up. From there, you'll just click on copy guide link to copy the link to those JavaScript tags to your clipboard. Then you will go into your email and send that link to the advertiser. You'll paste it into the email. If you were to click on preview, it would just open up the link that is copied when you click on copy guide link. If the store is hosted on Shopify, then setup actually gets a lot easier. You do not need to send the entire JavaScript tag page links. All you need to do is open up that page and then copy the third paragraph that starts with, if you have a Shopify site, blah, blah, blah. Just copy that entire paragraph and paste it into your email that gets sent to the advertiser. That paragraph has a link to the Shopify app right over there, and the advertiser ID and user ID that needs to be added to it. So the advertiser will see your paragraph. They'll click on the link to the Shopify app. It'll look like this. They'll then install it and click on the app on the left-hand side of the screen, and it'll open up a page that looks like this. From there, they will go back to the paragraph you sent them, and they will copy the advertiser ID and user ID that you sent them, and they'll paste them both into here. Note that the advertiser name is the one that is legible, and the user ID is the one that is kind of a string of numbers and stuff. The user ID is actually not the user ID of the brand or advertiser. It is the user ID of the account that was generating the tags for the brand. So the reason we do this is because it tells our system that if that user ID is attached to a particular brand name, it tells our system that the events from that particular brand's website should be visible to the agency or the publisher that is whose user ID is in this on this page here. So if they do not include a user ID, then you will not be able to see that brand's events in your tag setup tab or in the overview tab afterwards. So it's helpful to have that if you are an agency or a publisher helping a client set up. Once they click on Activate Pixel, this is what it'll look like. Note that one common mistake is to type in the user ID as the brand ID and the brand ID as the user ID. So if a client has gone through all of these steps and you don't see the events on your end and they don't see it on their end, then you should ask for a screenshot of the entire page here to make sure that they typed in the right words and strings in the right places. So that's how you set up a store that's hosted on Shopify. If they install both JavaScript tags and the Shopify app, we will get duplicate events, which we do not want. So in that instance, just send the Shopify app and make sure that's clear that they should just install the Shopify app. If your client is hosted on a headerless Shopify store, that means that they use Shopify to deal with checkouts and the purchasing process, but they use their own code to run their landing page and catalog of purchasable items. In that instance, what we usually do is we send the JavaScript tag to track view events, and we ask them to set up the Shopify app to track purchase events. If the advertiser is wanting to track app events like installs, then what they would need is a link to the guide for MMP integrations. MMPs are basically these products or SaaS businesses that send raw data about app events from the brand to Podscribe. So that's what needs to be done here. One thing about MMP integrations is that they cannot always be done completely independently, particularly with AppsFlyer, because a problem that advertisers will have is that they don't have the ability to type in a brand name. The MMP AppsFlyer automatically chooses the brand name for them, which means that our system will get those events, but it will not know what brand those events are connected to, because the name will usually be different. For example, if we were setting up Nike, an MMP like AppsFlyer may send back those raw data events from AppsFlyer under the advertiser name Nike Just Do It. But since that is different from what we are setting up on Podscribe, which is Nike, our system will look at those two names and think those are different. Those are not the same. We should not show events from Nike Just Do It in Nike's account. So what our engineering team needs to do to fix this is connect Nike Just Do It with Nike so that Nike Just Do It events do show up in Nike's account. And to do that, we'll need to know that you're setting up an MMP. So please CC support@podscribe.com or adapps@podscribe.com, and we will help you further with that. Pop quiz. For smart promos, where would we get the data for the listeners of the ad and the listeners of the podcast being promoted? A smart promo, in case you don't know, is what we call a promotion of a podcast on another podcast or on another network. So it's like a regular campaign, except instead of a brand being promoted, it is a podcast. I'll tell you the answer in 10 seconds. The answer is very similar to the Venn diagram that we looked at earlier. We have to get all of the raw data from the brand. And in this case, the brand is the podcast being promoted. So we have to get all of the data of everyone who listens to that podcast, who downloads that podcast, because after someone listens to an ad for a podcast, we cannot assume that they will automatically go to the latest episode or to one particular episode. So we have to figure out who's listening to every single episode to do attribution correctly. So we get the data, we get that type of data from the prefix, which tells us download data of everyone downloading the podcast. And then for the people who listen to the ad, we can use the prefix if the ad is embedded, or we can use a pixel if the ad is dynamically inserted. That's how we track smart promos. And here is the guide to our RSS prefix in case you need to send that out. So to conclude, you send to the advertiser the tracking tags that are most that best fit the type of website or setup that they have. If they have a Shopify store, you send the third paragraph of that JavaScript tag page. If they're a regular website, you send them JavaScript tags. And if they're an app, you send them the guide to our MMP guide. If they use Google Tag Manager, we actually have a specific guide for Google Tag Manager, but you would still send them the JavaScript tags. Google Tag Manager just means that they will be adding the tags to Google Tag Manager rather than to their website directly. If they want to set up server to server, then we have a guide for that too. And if they want to set up a smart promo, use a prefix. Next is how to check that a brand is set up correctly. Wait, if you do have any questions, please write them in the comments below. I will look at them and I will address them as soon as possible. And chances are that if you have a question and you were paying attention, that 90% of everyone else who's watching this video also has that question. So you're not just helping yourself, you're also helping everyone else who watches the video by asking questions. So please write them below. Step 2, how to check that an advertiser is set up correctly. 3 steps that make it super easy. 1 is to create a login. 3 is to wait for the events to show up. And 2 is to wait for those events to show up. And 3 is to answer 3 questions. Here's how to create a login. Before we do that, I'm just going to go into why you should be creating a login for the advertiser. And the answer is that the advertiser is the party that is best equipped and best positioned to make sure that tracking is set up correctly. So by creating a login, you will be facilitating their ability to do so. The advertiser is the one who has set up their website. They best know how to set up tags on their site because it's their website. Every website is different. They'll know best. The second reason is because they alone have the power to tweak the pixel. A lot of engineering work, software engineering work, involves making small changes and then seeing if that fixes the problem. So when they are implementing the pixel on their end, the JavaScript pixel on their end, sometimes what they need to do is add 2 brackets and then see if that causes the pixel to fire, or add a comma and then see if that causes the pixel to fire. If you do not create an account for the advertiser, then what will happen is they will have to reach out to their Podscribe contact, the agency or publisher, to ask if events are coming in. And then the agency or publisher will have to look at the tag setup tab and say yes or no. And that turns a simple job of checking and rechecking that would usually take 1 minute or 2 minutes to a job that could take 1 or 2 days for everyone to get back to each other. So it is a lot more efficient if you just create an account for the advertiser on Podscribe, letting them make minute changes and seeing if those changes result in success at the brand sending Podscribe raw events than it is to not create an account for the advertiser. And lastly, the advertiser should be the one checking the tracking is set up correctly because they alone can see both Podscribe data and their website's data. The agency and publisher usually do not get to see this. So it's the advertiser who can, and thus it's the advertiser who is best equipped to see that Podscribe is getting all of the brand's raw data. And we'll go into how to do that. Okay, so here's how to create an account for them. You log into Podscribe. On the bottom left-hand side, you're gonna hover over the invite button, and then you're gonna click on new advertiser. From there, you're gonna type in the name of the advertiser, the same one that we were looking at earlier. And then you're gonna select full access if you would like them to see everything, or you could select limited access. The standard is to select simple campaigns and simple overview and tag setup. Simple campaigns and simple overview are like campaigns and overview, except they do not show the flags that publishers and agencies are usually spending their time addressing with podcasts. So if you want an advertiser to see the progression of their campaign and how many impressions are coming in, but none of those flags, then you would select simple campaigns and simple overview. They'll be able to see a modified version of the by campaign tab and the overview tab. The one that is most important to select, though, is the tag setup tab, because that is what lets the advertiser troubleshoot to ensure that the advertiser is sending all of the right raw data to Podscribe. So if you're going to select just one, you have to select tag setup. And you can always come back and change the permissions later, which I'll show you how to do. So after you've selected that, you click next, and then you write in the emails of the people who you should send login instructions to. So of course, the marketer who is involved with setting up these campaigns, it would be a good idea to add her. But then there's also the software engineer who is implementing the pixels. He would certainly need access to the tag setup tab. So make sure you find that person's email address and add them to Podscribe so that they don't have to end up in a situation where they are reaching out to the marketer who's reaching out to the agency or the publisher to see if events are coming into Podscribe. So it's super important that the person being added, that one of the people being added to Podscribe is the software engineer responsible for implementing the tags. Once they have been created, once you click save and send logins, it'll show up on your page here like this. If you want to change the permissions that they have, you can click on that little pencil icon beside their access, and then you can check or uncheck what you need to. If you want to remove someone from Podscribe, you can come to the right-hand side and click on the three dots, then click on remove user. And if you want to see, if you've given them certain access and you want to see what they can see, just click on login as Nike and you'll be able to look through their account and see what information they can see. So that is step one of how to check that they're set up correctly. It's to create a login for the advertiser. The next step is to wait for those events, their events, to show up in the tag setup tab. Here's what it looks like when the tag has not been set up. Here's what it also looks like when the tag has been set up incorrectly. If you want to know if the tag has been set up incorrectly, just go to your tag setup tab, and if nothing shows up, then that means we're getting nothing, or something hasn't been set up correctly. Maybe they use the user ID as the brand ID, and so now there are no events coming in for Nike. Maybe they just haven't gotten to it yet, and there are no events for Nike. But if you see a screen that looks like this in tag setup, that means that our system does not have any events that it can share. Here's what it looks like when our system does have events that it can share. We can see purchases and views coming in on the top left-hand side of that card, summary card, and then further down you can see possible issues and then the raw events themselves. On the right-hand side, you can see a graph of the purchases and views coming in. You can see there's a bump on in the last week of September and the first week of October. But this is the sign that events are coming in. And if you see this for 2 weeks, then you ought to reach out to the advertiser and say, hey, we're not noticing any events coming in yet. Could you please check the integration? Have you gotten to it? Is everything all right? So on and so forth. Once you have events showing up in the tag setup tab, you can then verify that the setup is done correctly by asking the advertiser 3 questions. Now, ideally, the advertiser answers these 3 questions himself, because that way, the software engineer at the advertiser should be answering these questions himself, because he's the one who set it up. Part of setup means making sure that things are coming in correctly. So these are the 3 questions. Is Podscribe getting all the events that you want to track? Is Podscribe getting the right data for these events? And is Podscribe getting them in the right quantity? Question 1 is a question that should be decided between the software developer, the marketer at the advertiser, and the person in contact with them from the agency or the publisher. If you want to track lead events, if you and the advertiser want to track lead events, but we're only getting view, purchase, and sign up events, that's a sign that the lead event tag is not firing on their page. It's not firing correctly, or it hasn't been added. Something's going on with the lead tag, and they need to go back into their website and make sure that the lead tag is tweaked and troubleshooted so that it starts firing events. We will only display the events that we are getting from the advertiser on this tag setup tab. So you've got to make sure that the events are coming in. You don't want to end up in a situation 2 weeks after a campaign has started where the advertiser says, hey, where are the attributed views? And then you go to check the tag setup tab and you can see that they never set up the view events, and thus they will not be able to find out how many view events there were that can be attributed to podcast listeners. So first, check that they're getting all of the events that they want to track. Next, is Podscribe getting the right data for these events? So if you're wanting to track purchases, you're going to want to make sure that the order value is coming in, the order number is coming in, hashed emails are coming in. The bottom line is that we can do attribution as long as we have the IP addresses of the people going to that website. Order value is helpful because if you want to calculate ROAS and CPA, it'll do so, the dashboard will do so automatically as long as we have the order value of these purchases and then the spend of the podcast campaign. Order number is also helpful because it lets us deduplicate the purchase events coming in so that someone who goes to the post checkout page 50 times to look at the status of their order will make the purchase tag fire 50 times as well. But since each of those fires has the same order number, our system will be able to tell that there were not 50 purchases. It's just one person visiting that page 50 times. Discount code, also helpful if you want to figure out how many people are using it. Hashed emails are not necessary and they're a bit difficult to set up. But if you do send them to us or send us raw emails, which we will hash immediately so that we don't have raw emails in our database, which could be a liability. If you send us hashed emails, or if the advertiser does, then we will be able to find 10 to 20% more attributed conversions, which is helpful for the accuracy of your data. And then if you click on any one of those line items below in the raw events tab, you'll be able to see the data associated with that fire. So if the advertiser is just testing out one fire at a time, they can then click on one of those events and then see what data is being sent in. You'll want to make sure that all of the data that you want to track is being sent in. So if you want to track what particular product are podcast listeners buying, you'll need to make sure that the advertiser is sending in products from the product parameter in the purchase tag. The last question to ask is whether Podscribe is getting the raw data in the right quantity. And this is perhaps the most important question to ask. Recall that the way that we do attribution is by finding the overlap between all of a brand's IPs and all of the ad listeners' IPs. But if we only get a fraction of the brand's IPs, we're only going to be able to do attribution on a very small fraction of them, which is not helpful. So what we're going to try and do is get a situation where this happens. And to do that, we need to count daily purchase events, daily sign-up events, and make sure that they match with the advertiser, such that if the advertiser sees 6,200 purchases on their end on March 18th, they should also see 6,200 purchase events in Podscribe. You can also, to make this easier, the advertiser can download a daily report of all of the purchase events coming in by selecting daily in the tag setup tab and then clicking on the download icon on the right-hand side. This is what that'll look like. What they'll then need to do is go into their end, into their store, and compare the daily purchase counts with the purchase counts from Podscribe. One other thing is that you can explain some differences between purchase counts by looking at that at differences in time zones, such that if you change the time zone, there'll be different daily purchase counts. So the advertiser will need to download the purchase counts with the time zone that they are currently in to get the best results. Of course, we can't always have 100% accuracy here because of things like ad blockers and cookie denials. So as long as there's a discrepancy no bigger than 10%, you're good to go. All of the things that I just mentioned, those 3 questions and how to check if attribution is set up properly, are in this guide that we have on our website, help.podscribe.com. Make sure to give it a check and also send it to the advertiser who is checking that the tags have been set up correctly. Once those 3 questions have been answered affirmatively, you can be confident that the advertiser is set up for attribution on their end. Once again, please leave any questions that you have in the comments below, and I will try and answer them as soon as possible. Or reach out to adops@podscribe.com or